In the shadow of the Cresthaven Observatory, where stars whisper secrets, a brilliant astronomer lies dead in a locked dome, his telescope fixed on a blank sky. Was it suicide or a chilling murder? Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of envy, ambition, and betrayal. A jealous colleague, an eager student, a silent groundskeeper, each hides a motive, each a clue. From a timed poison trap to a tampered telescope, the truth lies in the stars. Can Poirot align the clues before the killer's secret fades into the night? Chapter 1. The Locked Dome. The wind howled across the frost-bitten slopes of a Cresthaven hill, carrying with it a bitter chill that seemed to seep into the very bones of the landscape. Hercule Poirot, seated in the back of a rattling motor car, adjusted the brim of his immaculate Homburg hat, his gloved fingers precise despite the cold. Beside him, Captain Hastings huddled deeper into his overcoat, his scarf fluttering like a trapped bird. "Dreadful business, Poirot," he said, his voice muffled by the wool. "An astronomer dead in a locked observatory. It's like something out of a penny, dreadful." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint glimmer of amusement in his sharp green eyes. "A penny, dreadful, mon ami. No, no, it is a puzzle, and the little grey cells, they relish such challenges. A locked room is but a locked box, and every box has its key." The car lurched to a stop before the Cresthaven Observatory, a stark silhouette against the indigo sky. Its great dome, a marvel of modern engineering, gleamed faintly under the crescent moon, its surface pitted with frost. Inspector Japp awaited them at the entrance, his heavy coat doing little to mask his discomfort in the biting air. His face, usually ruddy, was pinched with unease. "Evening, Poirot, Hastings," he greeted, his breath forming clouds. "Doctor, Felix Warrender, found dead this morning. Door bolted from the inside, no windows, telescope pointing at a blank patch of sky. Looks like suicide, but—" He trailed off, rubbing his hands together. "Something doesn't sit right." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his head tilting like a bird of prey assessing its quarry. "Suicide, you say? Yet your tone, Inspector, it suggests doubt. Let us see this stage where death has played its part." They stepped into the observatory, the heavy door groaning shut behind them. The interior was a cavernous expanse of steel and shadow, the air heavy with the scent of polished metal, and something else. Something faint, acrid, almost imperceptible. At the center stood the telescope, a towering instrument of brass and glass, its lens angled upward as if in silent contemplation of the heavens. Beneath it, slumped in a leather chair, was the body of Dr. Felix Warrender. His face was pale, almost serene, his eyes half open, staring at nothing. His hands rested limply on his lap, one clutching a pencil, the other a crumpled star chart. Poirot approached with the grace of a cat, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over Warrender's face, not touching, merely observing. "No marks of violence," he murmured. "No blood, no bruises. Yet this odor." He leaned closer, his nostrils flaring delicately. "It is subtle, but it is there. A chemical, perhaps." Hastings, standing a respectful distance away, wrinkled his nose. "Can't say I smell anything, Poirot. Just cold metal and dust." "Patience, Hastings," Poirot replied, rising smoothly. "The nose of Hercule Poirot, it is more discerning than most." He turned to the telescope, its great eye fixed on the dome's slit, through which a sliver of starless sky was visible. He consulted the instrument's control panel, noting the coordinates etched in the logbook beside it. "Curious," he said, his voice soft but laced with intrigue. "These settings point to a region of the sky devoid of notable stars. Why would an astronomer of Dr. Warrender's repute study nothingness?" Japp scratched his chin. Could be a mistake, or maybe he was just off his rocker. Poirot's smile was thin, almost pitying. "Non, Inspector. A man such as Warrender does not waste his time on whims. There is purpose here, and purpose, it often leads to motive." He moved to the door, a heavy oak slab reinforced with steel, its bolt firmly in place. He tested it, finding no give. "Locked from within, you say, and no other entrances?" "None," Japp confirmed. "The dome's sealed tight, and the ventilation grates are too small for a man to crawl through." "We checked." Poirot's gaze swept the room, taking in the sparse furnishings. A desk cluttered with papers, a bookshelf lined with astronomical tomes, a small heater glowing faintly in the corner. "Then the method of death. It must be ingenious," he said, "for the murderer, if murderer there be, has left no trace of their passage." Hastings shivered, though whether from the cold or the eerie scene, he couldn't say. "It's uncanny, Poirot. A man dead, locked in with his telescope, staring at an empty sky. What's it all mean?" Poirot straightened, his hands clasped behind his back. "It means, mon ami, that we stand at the edge of a mystery. And Hercule Poirot, he does not rest until the stars of truth are aligned." As they stepped back into the night, the wind carried the faintest echo of the observatory's silence, a silence that seemed to whisper secrets yet to be uncovered. Chapter 2. The Three Suspects. The interior of the Cresthaven Observatory's administrative wing was a stark contrast to the cavernous dome where Dr. Felix Warrender's body lay. The small office, tucked behind a narrow corridor, was cramped and utilitarian, its walls lined with faded star charts and a single flickering electric lamp casting a jaundiced glow. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of old paper and wax polish, and the faint hum of the observatory's machinery vibrated through the floorboards. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small, immaculate figure a beacon of order amid the clutter. His sharp green eyes darted from one suspect to another, taking in every gesture, every flicker of expression, as if the truth might betray itself in a glance. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful shadow, hovered near the door, his hands clasped behind his back, his brow furrowed with the effort of keeping pace with Poirot's relentless scrutiny. Inspector Japp, less patient, paced the narrow space, his boots scuffing the worn linoleum. "Right then," Japp said, his voice brisk with authority. "These are the three we've got to start with. Closest to Warrender, closest to the scene. Let's see what they've got to say for themselves." Poirot inclined his head, a gesture so slight it might have been missed by a less observant eye. "Very well, Inspector. Let us meet these players in our little drama. But first, a word of caution. The truth. It is like a star, visible only when one knows precisely where to look." Japp grunted, accustomed to Poirot's cryptic flourishes, but undeterred. He opened the office door and beckoned the first of the suspects. "Dr. Margaret Lyle. Step in, please." Dr. Margaret Lyle entered with the measured stride of a woman accustomed to commanding attention. She was in her mid-40s, tall and angular, with a face that might have been striking in youth, but was now etched with the lines of ambition and frustration. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her grey eyes held a sharpness that seemed to cut through the room's dim light. She wore a tailored tweed suit, practical yet elegant, and her hands, clasped before her, bore the faint stains of ink and chemicals, marks of her trade as an astronomer. She sat in the chair Japp offered, her posture rigid, as if bracing for an assault. Poirot studied her, his head tilted slightly, his moustache a perfect crescent of calm. "Madame Lyle," he began, his voice soft but carrying the weight of authority. "You were the colleague of Dr. Warrender, n'est-ce pas? A fellow seeker of the stars. Tell me, what was the nature of your relationship with the deceased?" Dr. Lyle's lips tightened, a fleeting shadow crossing her face. "Professional," she said, her tone clipped. "Felix, Dr. Warrender, was a brilliant astronomer, perhaps the finest at Cresthaven. We collaborated on several projects, but his recent work, he kept it to himself." Her voice carried a trace of resentment, like a note struck off-key. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And this secrecy, it troubled you?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening briefly. It was unusual. Felix was always open about his research, eager to debate hypotheses over tea in the faculty lounge. But in the last few months, he became guarded. He spent hours alone in the observatory, locking the door even during the day. He said he was close to a discovery that would change the field. I thought it was hubris. "Hubris," Poirot repeated, savouring the word. "Or perhaps brilliance, madame. A discovery of such magnitude, it might inspire envy in others, non?" Dr. Lyle's gaze met his, unflinching. "If you're implying I was jealous, Monsieur Poirot, you're mistaken. I have my own work, my own reputation. I didn't need to ride Felix's coattails." Her voice was steady, but her left hand twitched, betraying a nerve. Poirot made a small, placating gesture. "Of course, madame. But tell me, where were you last night, when Dr. Warrender met his end?" "I was in my office, reviewing data from the Southern Sky Survey," she replied promptly. "I left around 10 o'clock, drove home, and was in bed by 11. My housekeeper can confirm it." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, Madame Lyle. For now, you may step outside." As she left, Hastings leaned close to Poirot. "She's a cool customer, eh? Didn't bat an eye?" "Too cool, perhaps," Poirot murmured. "The heart that feels no warmth may conceal much." Japp called the next suspect. "Thomas Reed, come in." Thomas Reed shuffled into the room, a lanky young man in his early 20s, his dark hair dishevelled and his spectacles slightly askew. His tweed jacket was patched at the elbows, and his fingers, stained with ink, fidgeted with the edge of his outbook. He sat awkwardly, his knees bouncing with nervous energy, his eyes darting between Poirot and Japp as if expecting a trap. "Monsieur Reed," Poirot said, his tone gentle, almost paternal. "You are a student of Dr. Warrender, oui? A disciple of the stars, learning at the feet of a master. What can you tell me of your mentor?" Thomas swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Doctor!" Warrender was inspiring. He supervised my thesis on nebula spectroscopy. He was kind, always patient, even when I got things wrong. But lately, he was distracted, always scribbling in that notebook of his, muttering about the Veil Nebula. Poirot's eyebrows lifted slightly. "The Veil Nebula, a most intriguing choice. And you, where were you last night?" "In the library," Thomas said quickly, "working on my thesis. I was there until midnight, maybe later. The night porter saw me leave." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And did you visit the observatory at all, perhaps to consult with Dr. Warrender?" "No." Thomas's voice rose, then softened. "I mean, no, sir. I haven't been in the dome for days. Dr. Warrender told me to focus on my writing. Poirot's eyes lingered on Thomas's sleeve, where a faint smudge of grease stood out against the worn fabric. You are fond of machinery, monsieur. The telescope, it requires maintenance, does it not? Thomas flushed. I helped with the telescope last week, just oiling the gears, routine stuff. Dr. Warrender showed me how. Routine, Poirot echoed, his voice soft but laden with meaning. Very well, Monsieur Reed. You may go. As Thomas hurried out, Hastings whispered, Nervy chap. That grease on his sleeve. Think he's hiding something? Poirot's lips curved faintly. The young, they are transparent, Hastings. But transparency can conceal as much as it reveals. Japp, growing impatient, called the final suspect. Amos Crane, in you come. Amos Crane entered with the slow, deliberate gait of a man who spent his days outdoors, his weathered face creased like old leather. He was in his late 50s, broad-shouldered, with hands calloused from years of labor. His grey hair was cropped close, and his eyes, a pale blue, held a guarded quality, as if he saw more than he cared to share. He wore a heavy canvas coat, patched and stained, and his boots left faint traces of mud on the floor. He sat heavily, folding his arms across his chest, his expression one of stoic indifference. Monsieur Crane, Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing. You are the groundskeeper, oui? The guardian of this place, watching over its secrets. Tell me, how did you come to discover Dr. Warrender's body? Amos's voice was low, gravelly. I do my rounds at dawn, check the grounds, the doors. Saw him through the window in the observatory door, slumped in his chair, not moving. I knocked, got no answer, so I called the police. Didn't touch nothing. Poirot's gaze flicked to Amos's hands, noting the faint chemical scent clinging to them. You handle many substances in your work, monsieur. Pesticides, perhaps? Amos nodded, unperturbed. Aye, for the gardens. Keeps the pests off the hedges. Nothing out of the ordinary. And the observatory itself, Poirot pressed. You have access to its workings, the ventilation, the machinery. Amos's eyes narrowed slightly. I clean around it, fix what's broke outside. Don't go messing with the telescope or vents. That's for the scientists. Poirot smiled, a small, enigmatic curve of the lips. Merci, Monsieur Crane. That will be all for now. As Amos left, Japp threw up his hands. Well, Poirot, 3 suspects, 3 alibis. Lyle's got the brains, Reed's got the nerves, and Crane's got the access. Where do we start? Poirot tapped his cane lightly against the floor, his eyes distant. We start, Inspector, with the telescope. It is the silent witness to this crime. Dr. Warrender was studying something of great import, something that perhaps one of these 3 wished to claim or destroy. Hastings frowned. But why kill him? If it's about this discovery, why not just steal his notes? Poirot's gaze sharpened. Because, mon ami, a discovery is only as valuable as the man who claims it. To steal the notes is to invite scrutiny. To remove the man is to clear the path. But we must know more. Inspector, may I see Dr. Warrender's notebook? Japp handed over a small, leather-bound volume, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting and complex equations. Poirot flipped through it, pausing at a phrase scrawled in bold, the Veil Nebula Anomaly. He traced the words with a gloved finger, his mind racing. This anomaly, he said softly. It is the key. A discovery that could rewrite the stars. And where there is such a prize, there is motive. He turned to Doctor Lyle, who had lingered in the corridor, her silhouette framed by the dim light. Madame Lyle, a question. This Veil Nebula anomaly. What did Dr. Warrender say of it? She stepped closer, her expression guarded. He called it a phenomenon unlike any other, a shift in the nebula's spectrum, something that defied known physics. He believed it would secure his legacy, perhaps a Nobel Prize. I told him he was dreaming. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Dreaming or daring? A man who reaches for the stars, madame, often provokes those content to stay on Earth. She bristled, but said nothing, retreating into the corridor. Poirot turned to Japp and Hastings. We have 3 suspects, each with opportunity, each with a thread of motive. Dr. Lyle, with her envy of Warrender's fame. Young Reed, with his ambition and access to the telescope. And Crane, the silent watcher, whose hands carry the scent of secrets. But it is the telescope itself that will speak next. He moved to the door, his steps purposeful. Come, Hastings, Inspector. Let us return to the dome. The stars, they do not lie, but men and women will weave their truths to obscure them. As they stepped into the cold night, the observatory loomed above, its dome a silent sentinel guarding the mysteries within. Poirot's mind, like the telescope, was trained on a single point, the truth, hidden in the vastness of human ambition. Chapter 3. The Blank Sky. The Cresthaven Observatory stood resolute against the biting wind, its dome a pale crescent under the star-strewn sky. Within, the air was heavy with the chill of winter and the weight of death. Hercule Poirot moved with deliberate grace, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the polished floor as he circled the great telescope. Its brass and steel form loomed like a silent giant, its lens fixed on a sliver of sky visible through the dome's open slit. Captain Hastings, trailing behind, rubbed his hands together, his breath rumbling. It's like a fortress, Poirot, locked tight, no way in or out. Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice a soft murmur, his eyes never leaving the telescope. But even the strongest fortress has its cracks. We must find them. Inspector Japp, standing near the desk cluttered with Dr. Felix Warrender's papers, scratched his jaw. No signs of a break-in, no footprints, no fingerprints except Warrender's own. It's as if the man died alone, staring at nothing. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint sign of his mind at work. Nothing, Inspector. Non, non. The telescope tells a different story. He gestured to the instrument's control panel, where a series of coordinates were etched in the logbook, precise and deliberate. These settings point to a region of the sky, barren of significant stars. A curious choice for a man of Dr. Warrender's caliber. Why would he study an empty void? Hastings frowned, his breath visible in the cold air. Could it be an error? Perhaps he miscalculated the coordinates. Poirot shook his head, his gloved finger tracing the logbook's entries. Doctor, Warrender was not a man to make such mistakes, so no, these coordinates were set with purpose. But whether by him or another, that is the question. He stepped closer to the telescope, inspecting its gears and levers with the precision of a watchmaker. The mechanism was pristine, save for a single, barely perceptible scratch on the azimuth gear. A mark so subtle, it might have gone unnoticed by a less discerning eye. Regarde, Poirot said, pointing to the scratch. This is recent. The telescope was moved after Dr. Warrender's death, I think, to mislead us. Japp's brow furrowed. Moved? Why bother? If he was poisoned, what's the telescope got to do with it? Poirot's eyes gleamed, reflecting the faint glow of the overhead lights. The telescope. It is the heart of this mystery. Dr. Warrender was studying something extraordinary. His notes speak of the Veil Nebula anomaly. To point the telescope elsewhere suggests a desire to obscure his work, to make his death appear as madness or despair. But the truth, it is never so simple. He turned to the desk where Warrender's notebook lay open, its pages filled with equations and diagrams, each line a testament to a mind consumed by discovery. Poirot flipped to a page marked with a bold heading, "The Veil Nebula Anomaly." The text described a spectral shift in the nebula's light, a phenomenon defying known astrophysical principles. Warrender's notes were fervent, almost feverish, with phrases like unprecedented energy signature and potential to redefine stellar evolution. Poirot's finger paused on a margin note. Must confirm before Lyle interferes. Lyle, Poirot murmured. Dr. Margaret Lyle, his colleague. This suggests tension, does it not? Hastings nodded, his face thoughtful. Sounds like Warrender was worried she'd meddle with his work. Could she have wanted to steal it? Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone measured. Or perhaps she wished to suppress it. A discovery of this magnitude could shift the balance of their shared world. Fame, funding, prestige. But we must not leap to conclusions. The little grey cells, they require more. Japp produced a small evidence bag containing a key found in Warrender's pocket. This was on him, he said. Fits the observatory door. No duplicates, no signs of tampering. The lock's solid, old but sturdy. I had my boys check it twice. Poirot took the key, turning it over in his gloved hand. A single key, a single lock. Yet death entered this room. How? He moved to the ventilation grate near the floor, a narrow slit of metal barely wide enough for a hand. Kneeling, he peered inside, his nose wrinkling at a faint, acrid scent, not unlike the one near Warrender's body. Inspector, have your men examine this grate. There may be traces of something unnatural. Japp signaled to a constable, who began inspecting the grate with a torch. You thinking poison gas, Poirot? Japp asked. It is possible, Poirot replied. The coroner's report is not yet complete, but the absence of ingestion marks or wounds suggests a method both subtle and sinister. A gas, released into a sealed room, would leave no trace of entry or exit. Hastings shivered, though the room was not as cold as before. That's devilishly clever, Poirot. But how would someone get the gas in here without being seen? Poirot's gaze returned to the telescope, then to the grate. The ventilation system. It is a silent conspirator. A small device, timed to release its deadly cargo, could be placed and removed without disturbing the lock. But we need evidence. Something tangible. The constable called out, his torch illuminating a faint residue inside the grate. Sir, there's something here. Looks like a powdery substance, maybe chemical. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Have it analyzed at once. It may be the shadow of our murderer's hand. He turned back to the notebook, flipping to the final entry, dated the previous night. Warrender had written, Observation at 2300 hours. Anomaly confirmed. Must protect data from L's ambition. The L was unmistakable, and Poirot's mind seized upon it. Dr. Lyle again, he said softly. Her name weaves through this tragedy like a thread. Japp crossed his arms. So we've got a motive for Lyle. Jealousy? Maybe wanting to claim this anomaly for herself. Reed's a nervous sort, could have been desperate for recognition. And Crane, he's got the run of the place, knows every nook. Any of them could have rigged something. Poirot nodded, his expression serene yet intense. "Each has a piece of the puzzle, Inspector. Dr. Lyle, with her intellect and access to laboratory supplies. Young Reed, with his knowledge of the telescope's workings. And Monsieur Crane, whose groundskeeper duties grant him unseen passage through this place. But the telescope's misdirection. It points to a mind that understands astronomy, that knows the significance of a blank sky." Hastings rubbed his chin. "So, the killer wanted us to think Warrender was unhinged, staring at nothing. That's cold. Cold, oui, but calculated," Poirot said. "The blank sky is a lie, meant to obscure the truth of the Veil Nebula anomaly. We must learn more of this discovery, what it meant to Warrender, and what it threatened in others." He closed the notebook with a gentle snap, his mind already sifting through the possibilities. "Come, Hastings, Inspector. Let us return to the office. The suspects they await, and their words may yet reveal what the stars conceal." As they stepped into the corridor, the observatory's dome loomed behind them, its silence a challenge to Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. The night sky above was vast, but to Hercule Poirot it was merely a map, and every star a clue waiting to be read. Chapter 4. The Chemical Clue. The Cresthaven Observatory's administrative wing was a labyrinth of narrow corridors, its walls papered with faded astronomical charts that curled at the edges like forgotten dreams. The small office where Hercule Poirot now stood was suffused with the dim glow of a single electric lamp, its light casting long shadows across the cluttered desk, and the faces of Inspector Japp and Captain Hastings. The air carried the musty scent of old books, overlaid with a faint, unsettling tang that Poirot's keen senses had already noted in the observatory dome. His gloved hands were clasped behind his back, his head tilted slightly as he absorbed the room's atmosphere, his mind a whirl of precision and intuition. Inspector Japp, his coat now unbuttoned in the relative warmth of the office, held up a manila envelope. "Coroner's preliminary report just came in," he said, his voice gruff but tinged with anticipation. "Dr. Warrender died of cyanide poisoning. No signs of ingestion. No food, no drink, no marks on the mouth or throat. It's as if the poison came from nowhere." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with the faintest hint of satisfaction. "From nowhere, Inspector. No, no. The poison, it came from the air itself, a gas administered with cunning, in a room sealed as tightly as a tomb." He turned to the ventilation grate in the corner of the office, a smaller cousin to the one in the observatory dome, and gestured for Japp to follow. "You recall the residue your constable found in the dome's grate? I suspect it is the key to our mystery." Japp nodded, his brow furrowed. "The lab's analyzing it now. Should have results by morning. But if it's cyanide, how'd it get in there? And how'd the killer get it out without leaving a trace?" Poirot's lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. "That, mon ami, is where the ingenuity lies. Come, let us return to the scene of the crime. The observatory. It has more secrets to yield." They retraced their steps to the dome, the cold night air biting at their faces as they crossed the threshold. The telescope stood sentinel, its lens still fixed on that perplexing patch of blank sky. Dr. Warrender's body had been removed, but the chair where he had sat remained, a silent witness to his final moments. Poirot moved to the ventilation grate near the floor, kneeling with a grace that belied his compact frame. He produced a small, magnifying glass from his pocket, its lens catching the faint light as he examined the grate's interior. "Regardez," he said, his voice low but commanding. "The residue, it is faint, but it clings to the metal. A fine powder, perhaps the residue of a chemical reaction. And here," he pointed to a tiny, almost invisible scratch on the grate's edge. A tool was used, something small and precise, to open or close this grate. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. "A tool? You mean the killer tampered with the ventilation?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, rising smoothly. "I believe a small canister, equipped with a timer, was placed within the ventilation system. At a predetermined hour, likely midnight when Dr. Warrender worked alone, the canister released its deadly gas. The murderer then returned, removed the canister, and left the room locked, with no trace of their passage." Japp's eyes widened. "A timed release. That's devilishly clever, Poirot. But how'd they get in to retrieve it? The door was bolted from the inside." Poirot's gaze drifted to the telescope, then back to the grate. "The door. It is a distraction. The ventilation system. It is the true path of the crime. The grate is accessible from the exterior, is it not? Near the groundskeeper's shed, perhaps?" Japp snapped his fingers. "You're right. There's an external vent behind the observatory, hidden by some bushes. Crane would know it well. He's always poking around out there." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone thoughtful. "Monsieur Crane, with his tools and his knowledge of the grounds. Or perhaps Dr. Lyle, with her access to laboratory chemicals. Or young Reed, who knows the telescope's workings and might understand the ventilation's layout. Each could have placed the canister, but only one had the motive to do so." Hastings rubbed his chin, his face a mask of a concentration. "But the canister's gone, Poirot. If they took it, where is it now?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "That, Hastings, is why we must search. The murderer was careful, but no one is perfect. There will be a trace, a thread, a speck of dust that betrays them." Japp dispatched a constable to examine the external vent, while Poirot returned to Warrender's desk, his fingers leafing through the scattered papers. Among them was a laboratory requisition form, dated 2 weeks prior, requesting a small quantity of potassium cyanide for experimental calibration. The form was signed by Dr. Margaret Lyle. "Tiens," Poirot murmured, holding up the form. "Madame Lyle, she has access to cyanide. A scientist's tool, perhaps, but also a murderer's weapon." Japp's jaw tightened. "That's damning, Poirot. She said she was in her office last night, but if she had cyanide—" "Do not be too hasty, Inspector," Poirot cautioned. "A requisition form is not a confession. Many in a laboratory might access such a substance. We must confirm the canister's existence and its method of delivery." The constable returned, his face flushed from the cold. "Found something, sir," he said, holding up a small metallic fragment wrapped in a handkerchief. "Wedged in the external vent. Looks like part of a screw, maybe from a canister." Poirot took the fragment, examining it under his magnifying glass. "A screw, oui, but not from any common device. Its threading is fine, precise. Designed for a specialized container, perhaps one used in a laboratory." He pocketed the fragment, his mind racing. "This is progress, Inspector. The canister was here, and it was removed. But where is it now?" He moved to the telescope, his gaze lingering on the scratched azimuth gear. The telescope, too, plays its part. Its misdirection to a blank sky was no accident. The killer wished to obscure Dr. Warrender's discovery, the Vale Nebula anomaly. But why? To steal it, or to ensure it never saw the light of day. Hastings shivered, though the dome was less frigid now. It's eerie, Poirot. A man poisoned in a locked room, his telescope pointing at nothing. It's like a riddle wrapped in a nightmare. Poirot's smile was faint, but resolute. A riddle, oui, but one that Hercule Poirot will unravel. The chemical clue, it points to a mind both scientific and ruthless. We must question our suspects further, probe their alibis, their secrets. Japp nodded, his expression grim. I'll have my men search the groundskeeper's shed and Lyle's office. If that canister's still here, we'll find it. Bon, Poirot said, adjusting his hat. And I shall consult the notebook once more. Dr. Warrender's words, they may yet guide us to the truth. As they left the dome, the night sky stretched above, its stars sharp and unyielding. Poirot's mind, like the telescope, was trained on a single point, the invisible thread connecting the cyanide, the telescope, and the ambition that drove a killer to act. The observatory, silent and austere, held its secrets close, but Poirot knew that even the deepest shadows could not hide from the light of his little grey cells. Chapter 5. The colleagues' envy, the administrative wing of the Cresthaven Observatory, felt more oppressive with each passing hour, its narrow corridors and dim lighting fostering a sense of confinement that mirrored the tightening knot of the mystery. Hercule Poirot sat at the cluttered desk in the small office, his gloved hands steepled before him, his sharp green eyes fixed on the doorway where Dr. Margaret Lyle would soon appear. The faint hum of the observatory's machinery pulsed through the walls, a reminder of the silent dome where Dr. Felix Warrender had met his end. Captain Hastings stood by the window, peering out at the frost-kissed grounds, while Inspector Japp paced, his impatience barely contained. "Doctor?" "Lyle's got some explaining to do," Japp muttered, clutching the laboratory requisition form Poirot had found, its signature a stark accusation in black ink. Cyanide, ordered by her own hand. If that's not a clue, I don't know what is. Poirot's moustache twitched, his expression serene yet piercing. A clue, oui, Inspector, but not yet a conviction. The mind of the murderer is subtle, and Dr. Lyle, she is a woman of intellect. We must tread carefully, lest we mistake the shadow for the substance. The door opened, and Dr. Margaret Lyle entered, her tall frame rigid, her grey eyes wary but defiant. She wore the same tailored tweed suit, its severe lines accentuating her angular features, but a faint flush coloured her cheeks, betraying a crack in her usual composure. She sat without being asked, her hands folded tightly in her lap, as if to anchor herself against the scrutiny of Poirot's gaze. "Madame Lyle," Poirot began, his voice soft, but laced with an unyielding authority. "You have been most cooperative, and for that Hercule Poirot is grateful. But there are matters we must discuss, matters of cyanide and ambition." Lyle's lips thinned, but she met his eyes without flinching. "I've told you everything I know, Monsieur Poirot. I was in my office last night working. I had no reason to harm Felix." Poirot leaned forward, his fingers tapping lightly on the requisition form. "And yet, madame, this document suggests otherwise. Potassium cyanide, ordered by you 2 weeks ago for experimental calibration. A curious choice, no? Cyanide is not a common tool for astronomers." Lyle's flush deepened, but her voice remained steady. "It's not as sinister as you make it sound. We use small quantities in the lab for calibrating spectrographic equipment, testing chemical reactions in controlled conditions. Felix himself approved the order. It's standard procedure." Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the faint tremor in her tone. Standard, perhaps, for a scientist, but convenient for a murderer. Dr. Warrender died of cyanide poisoning, administered through the air. A canister, timed to release its deadly gas, could have been placed in the ventilation system, a system you, as a senior researcher, know well. Lyle's hands tightened, her knuckles whitening. You're accusing me based on a form. I'm not the only one with access to the lab. Felix used it. Thomas Reed was always poking around. Even Amos Crane comes in to clean. Anyone could have taken it. Poirot tilted his head, his expression one of polite skepticism. Possible, madame, but unlikely. Your resentment of Dr. Warrender, it is evident in his notes. He wrote of your interference, your ambition. He feared you wished to claim his discovery, the Veil Nebula anomaly, for yourself. Lyle's composure faltered, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and pain. Interference, that's rich. Felix was the one shutting me out, hoarding his data like a miser. We were supposed to be partners, but he treated me like a rival. Yes, we argued. Over funding, over priorities. The observatory's budget is tight, and Felix wanted it all for his precious anomaly. My own research, years of work on galactic clusters, was pushed aside. Do you know what that feels like, Monsieur Poirot, to see your life's work dismissed? Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. I understand ambition, madame, and the sting of being overlooked. But did this sting drive you to act, to ensure that Dr. Warrender's discovery and his life were extinguished? Lyle rose abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum. I'm a scientist, not a killer. I envied Felix's success, yes, but I didn't need to murder him to prove myself. My work will stand on its own. Her voice cracked, betraying a vulnerability she quickly masked. If you want a motive, look at Thomas Reed. That boy is desperate to make a name for himself, and Felix was his ticket to fame. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Merci, Madame Lyle. You may go, but we will speak again. As Lyle left, her footsteps echoing down the corridor, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. She's got a temper, Poirot. And that requisition form, it's practically a signed confession. Poirot shook his head, his fingers tracing the edge of Warrender's notebook. Non, Hastings. A form is not a confession, nor is a temper a crime. Dr. Lyle is proud, perhaps envious, but pride alone does not make a murderer. We must consider the others, young Reed with his ambition, and Crane with his silent access to the observatory's secrets. Japp crossed his arms, his impatience bubbling over. So, what's next, Poirot? We've got the cyanide link to Lyle, but no canister. My men are searching her office and Crane's shed, but if it's gone, we're back to square one. Poirot's eyes drifted to the window, where the observatory dome loomed against the night sky. Square one, Inspector. No, we are advancing. The canister, it was removed, but the fragment of the screw found in the external vent. It is a thread in the tapestry. And the telescope, its misdirection to a blank sky, tells us the killer understood Warrender's work. Dr. Lyle? She has the knowledge, the access, the motive. But so, perhaps, do the others. He rose, adjusting his coat with meticulous care. I wish to see Dr. Lyle's office, Inspector. Her workspace. It may reveal what her words conceal. They crossed the grounds to the laboratory wing, a low brick building adjacent to the observatory. Dr. Lyle's office was a study in organized chaos, star charts pinned to the walls, stacks of journals teetering on shelves, and a desk littered with spectrographic data. Poirot moved with purpose, his magnifying glass in hand, examining the desk, the shelves, the waste bin. In a drawer, he found a small notebook, its pages filled with Lyell's precise handwriting. Notes on galactic clusters, but also a draft of a funding proposal, marked with angry redactions where Warrender's name appeared. "Regardez," Poirot said, holding up the notebook. Madame Lyell was preparing to fight for her share of the observatory's resources. This proposal, it challenges Warrender's project directly. A motive, perhaps, to eliminate the competition. Hastings frowned. But if she wanted the funding, why not just sabotage his work? Why go as far as murder? Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing. Because, mon ami, a discovery like the Vale Nebula anomaly is not merely a project, it is a legacy. To sabotage it risks exposure. To remove the man ensures silence. But we must be certain. The cyanide, the canister, the telescope, these are the pieces of our puzzle, and they must fit perfectly. Japp's constable entered, holding a small evidence bag. "Found this in the lab's chemical storage, sir. A vial labeled for calibration, but it's empty. Could have held cyanide." Poirot examined the vial, noting its fine threading, similar to the screw fragment from the vent. "A match, perhaps," he murmured. "But we need more. Inspector, have your men check the storage records. Who accessed this vial, and when?" As Japp issued orders, Poirot's mind churned, sifting through the clues, the requisition form, the scratched telescope gear, the chemical residue, the empty vial. Dr. Lyell's envy was palpable, her opportunity clear, but the puzzle was not yet complete. The observatory, with its silent stars and hidden truths, held the answers, and Poirot would not rest until they were his. "Come, Hastings, Inspector," he said, his voice resolute. "The night grows late, but the little grey cells, they do not sleep. We must probe deeper into the hearts of our suspects and into the shadows of this silent observatory." Chapter 6. The Student's Ambition. The Cresthaven Observatory's laboratory wing was a maze of sterile corridors, their linoleum floors gleaming under the harsh electric lights. Hercule Poirot moved with his characteristic precision, his polished shoes clicking softly as he followed Inspector Japp and Captain Hastings to the small study room assigned to Thomas Reed, the graduate student whose nervous demeanor had piqued Poirot's interest. The air was heavy with the scent of chemicals and dust, a reminder of the scientific pursuits that filled these halls. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, the stars obscured by a veil of clouds, as if the heavens themselves were guarding their secrets. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details, the cyanide residue in the ventilation grate, the scratched telescope gear, the empty vial from Dr. Lyell's laboratory, and now the faint smudge of grease on Thomas Reed's sleeve, a detail that lingered like a discordant note in a symphony. The young man's ambition, his proximity to Dr. Warrender, and his knowledge of the observatory's machinery made him a figure of interest, and Poirot intended to probe the depths of his character. Inspector Japp pushed open the door to Reed's study room, a cramped space cluttered with textbooks, star charts, and a typewriter perched precariously on a narrow desk. Thomas Reed sat hunched over a notebook, his spectacles slipping down his nose, his ink-stained fingers twitching as he scribbled furiously. He started at their entrance, his eyes darting between Poirot's serene countenance and Japp's stern expression. I wasn't expecting you," he stammered, pushing his chair back with a scrape. Poirot raised a gloved hand, his smile disarming yet piercing. "Monsieur Reed, do not be alarmed. Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth, and you, I believe, have much to share. May we sit?" Thomas nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he gestured to a pair of rickety chairs. Poirot settled himself with fastidious care, adjusting his coat to avoid the desk's clutter, while Hastings and Japp remained standing, the latter's impatience evident in his restless stance. "Monsieur Reed," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding, "you were the student of Dr. Warrender, oui? A young man with dreams of the stars, guided by a mentor of great renown. Tell me, what was the nature of your work with him?" Thomas adjusted his spectacles, his hands trembling slightly. "Dr. Warrender was my thesis supervisor. I'm studying nebula spectroscopy, analyzing the light from nebulae to understand their composition. He was helping me refine my data on the Veil Nebula. He said my work could be significant." His voice held a mix of pride and uncertainty, as if he scarcely believed his own words. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the flicker of ambition in the young man's gaze. "Significant, you say? And this Veil Nebula, it was the focus of Dr. Warrender's own research, was it not? The anomaly he believed would redefine astronomy. Did he share this discovery with you?" Thomas hesitated, his fingers twisting a pencil. "Not everything. He was secretive lately. He'd show me bits of his data, let me run calculations, but he kept the big picture to himself, said it was too important to share until he was sure. I respected that. He was the expert, after all." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching. Respect, oui, but also frustration, perhaps, to be so close to a great discovery, yet held at arm's length. A young man with ambition might feel impatient. Thomas flushed, his eyes dropping to the desk. "I wasn't impatient. I was grateful. Dr. Warrender was going to include my name on his paper. He said it would launch my career." "Launch," Poirot echoed, his tone gentle but probing. "A powerful word, monsieur. And yet, Dr. Warrender is dead, his paper unfinished, his telescope pointed at a blank sky. Tell me, where were you last night, when your mentor met his end?" "In the library," Thomas said quickly, his voice rising. "Working on my thesis, like I told you. I was there until past midnight. The night porter can vouch for me." Poirot's gaze drifted to Thomas's sleeve, where the grease smudge stood out against the worn tweed. "And this mark, monsieur. It suggests you have been near machinery. The telescope, perhaps. You mentioned assisting with its maintenance." Thomas's hand jerked to his sleeve, as if to cover the smudge. That's from last week. I helped Dr. Warrender oil the gears. It's heavy work, adjusting the telescope. I got a bit messy, that's all." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Thomas's. "Messy, oui, but precise. The telescope's gears bear a scratch, a recent one, suggesting they were moved after Dr. Warrender's death. You know the instrument well, do you not? Its levers, its settings, perhaps even its ventilation system." Thomas paled, his spectacles slipping further. "I didn't touch the telescope last night. I swear it. I was in the library, nowhere near the dome." Japp, growing restless, stepped forward. "Easy to say, lad, but that grease on your sleeve, it's the same type we found on the telescope's gears. Care to explain that?" Thomas's mouth opened, then closed, his hands clenching into fists. "I told you, it's from last week. I haven't been near it since. You can't pin this on me just because of some grease." Poirot raised a placating hand, his voice soothing, yet unrelenting. "Calm yourself, Monsieur Reed. We do not pin, we inquire. But the truth, it is like a star. It shines brightest when uncovered. Tell me, did Dr. Warrender ever speak of Dr. Lyle or of Monsieur Crane in relation to his work?" Thomas swallowed, his gaze flickering to the door. He mentioned Doctor. Lyle a few times, said she was too nosy, always asking about his data. He didn't trust her, thought she might try to take credit. As for Amos, he just said he was reliable, kept the place running. Nothing more. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. "And you, monsieur, did you ever feel the temptation to look at Dr. Warrender's notes to see this anomaly for yourself?" Thomas's flush returned, deeper this time. "I'm not a thief. I wanted to earn my place, not steal it. Dr. Warrender trusted me, and I respected him." Poirot's smile was faint, almost pitying. "Respect, oui, but ambition is a powerful force. Merci, Monsieur Reed. You may go, but we will speak again." As Thomas hurried out, his footsteps uneven, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "He's jumpy as a cat, Poirot. That grease on his sleeve. It's too convenient. Think he's hiding something?" Poirot tapped his cane lightly against the floor, his eyes distant. "The young. They are often transparent, Hastings. But transparency can be a mask. Monsieur Reed is ambitious, yes. But is he cunning? The telescope's misdirection requires knowledge, precision. He has both, but so does Dr. Lyle. And Monsieur Crane, he remains an enigma." Japp crossed his arms, his frustration evident. "We've got the cyanide linked to Lyle, the grease linked to Reed, and nothing solid on Crane. My men are still searching his shed, but if that canister's gone, we're chasing shadows." Poirot's gaze returned to the desk, where Thomas's notebook lay open, its pages filled with spectral analyses and references to the Vale Nebula. He flipped through it, pausing at a diagram that mirrored one in Warrender's own notes. "Interesting," he murmured. "Young Reed's work is closely tied to Dr. Warrender's. If the anomaly were published, his name would rise with it. A motive, perhaps, to hasten the process, or to ensure it never reached the light." Hastings frowned. "You mean he might have killed Warrender to steal the discovery?" "Or to protect his own contribution," Poirot said. "But we lack the final piece. The canister, the telescope, the cyanide. They form a pattern. But it is incomplete. Inspector, have you the results of the chemical analysis from the ventilation grate?" Japp shook his head. "Not yet. The lab's working overtime, but it's a tricky substance. They're saying it's definitely cyanide residue, though." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Then we must wait, but not idly. Monsieur Reed's alibi, it must be verified. The night porter, he will confirm the time of his departure from the library. And the telescope's gears, have your men examine them for traces of the same grease on Reed's sleeve." As Japp issued orders to a constable, Poirot stepped to the window, his gaze fixed on the observatory dome, its silhouette stark against the clouded sky. "The student's ambition," he said softly. "It burns brightly. But does it burn with malice? The truth, it lies in the details, the grease, the scratch, the shadow of a canister. We are close, mes amis, but the stars, they are not yet aligned." He turned, his expression resolute. "Come, let us return to the dome. The telescope, it has more to tell us, and Hercule Poirot listens when the stars speak." Chapter 7. The Groundskeeper's Silence. The Cresthaven Observatory's grounds were shrouded in the pre-dawn chill, the frost glistening on the manicured hedges like a scattering of diamonds under the faint starlight. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned tightly against the cold, moved with his usual precision across the uneven path leading to the groundskeeper's shed. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his scarf pulled tight, muttering about the unearthly hour, while Inspector Japp, ever pragmatic, strode ahead, his torch cutting through the shadows. The shed, a squat structure of weathered wood and corrugated iron, stood near the observatory's rear, its proximity to the external ventilation vent, a detail that had not escaped Poirot's meticulous mind. "The groundskeeper, Amos Crane," Poirot murmured, his breath forming brief clouds in the frigid air. "He is the silent shadow of this place, always present, yet unseen. His hands, they carry the scent of chemicals, and his shed, it may hold the key to our mystery." Hastings shivered, his voice low. "Crane's a tough nut to crack, Poirot. Hardly says a word, but those eyes of his, they see everything." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting. "It is the silent ones who often know the most. We must listen to what Monsieur Crane doesn't say." Japp reached the shed first, rapping sharply on the door. "Crane! Police! Open up!" The door creaked open, revealing Amos Crane's grizzled figure, his broad shoulders filling the frame. His face, weathered as old leather, betrayed no surprise, only a flicker of wariness in his pale blue eyes. He wore a patched canvas coat, his calloused hands resting calmly at his sides, though Poirot noted the faint chemical odor clinging to them, sharper now in the confined space of the shed's threshold. "What's this about?" Amos asked, his voice a low rumble, like gravel underfoot. Poirot stepped forward, his demeanor courteous but unyielding. "Monsieur Crane, we seek the truth about Dr. Warrender's death. You, as the guardian of these grounds, have seen much, perhaps more than you have shared. May we enter?" Amos hesitated, then stepped aside, allowing them into the shed. The interior was a chaos of tools and gardening supplies, shovels, rakes, bags of fertilizer stacked against the walls, and a workbench cluttered with screws, cans of oil, and a battered lantern. The air was thick with the scent of earth and chemicals, a pungent mix that made Hastings wrinkle his nose. Poirot, however, moved with purpose, his magnifying glass in hand, inspecting the workbench with the precision of a jeweler. "You found Dr. Warrender's body at dawn," Poirot began, his voice soft but probing. "Through the observatory's window, you said, yet you did not enter. Why so cautious, monsieur?" Amos folded his arms, his expression impassive. "Didn't need to. Saw he was dead. Slumped, not moving. I know better than to mess with a crime scene. Called the police straight off." Poirot's eyes flicked to a pair of heavy gloves on the workbench, their cuffs stained with a faint, acrid residue. "These gloves, they carry a curious smell. Not unlike the cyanide we suspect killed Dr. Warrender. You use pesticides, oui? But cyanide, it is not a common choice for gardens." Amos's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Pesticides, aye. For the roses, the hedges, strong stuff, but nothing illegal. You won't find cyanide in my shed." Japp, growing impatient, stepped forward. "We'll see about that, Crane. My men are searching this place, top to bottom. If there's anything here, we'll find it." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming but firm. "Patience, Inspector. Monsieur Crane, you have access to the observatory's exterior, including the ventilation vent where we found a fragment of a screw. A canister, perhaps, placed to release a deadly gas. You know the grounds well, every path, every shadow. Did you see anyone near the vent yesterday?" Amos's eyes narrowed, but he shook his head. "I was fixing a gate on the far side of the grounds till late. Didn't see nobody near the observatory. Too dark, anyway." Poirot's gaze lingered on Amos, reading the subtle tension in his posture. "Dark, oui. But you are a man who notices details. The telescope, it was moved to point at a blank sky. Did you ever assist Doctor? Warrender with its maintenance, or perhaps observe others doing so?" Amos shrugged, his broad shoulders shifting. "I don't touch the telescope. That's for the scientists. I clean the grounds, fix the pipes, that's all. Reed was always fiddling with it, though. Oiling gears, adjusting things for Warrender." Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind seizing on the mention of Thomas Reed. "Young Reed, oui. And Dr. Lyle. Did she ever speak of Doctor? Warrender's work, perhaps with resentment?" Amos's lips curled slightly, a rare hint of emotion. "She's a sharp one, Dr. Lyle. Heard her arguing with Warrender once, about money for the observatory. She wasn't happy he got the lion's share. But that's not my business." Poirot nodded, filing the information away. He moved to the workbench, his magnifying glass hovering over a small tin of machine oil, its lid slightly askew. The oil matched the type found on Reed's sleeve and the telescope's gears. "This oil, monsieur, it is used for machinery, non? Perhaps for the telescope?" Amos grunted. "Could be. I use it for my tools, the gate hinges. Reed might have borrowed some. He's always in here, asking for this or that." Japp's eyes lit up. "Borrowed, eh? That puts Reed near your shed, Crane. And if he got oil from here, he could have got something else, like a canister." Poirot's expression remained serene, but his mind was racing. "Possible, Inspector, but we must not leap. Monsieur Crane, your shed is close to the external vent. Did you notice anything unusual there yesterday? A sound? A shadow?" Amos's gaze flickered, almost imperceptibly. "Nothing I recall. I was busy. Grounds don't keep themselves." Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing. "Merci, Monsieur Crane. You have been most helpful. We will speak again." As they stepped back into the cold, Japp's constable approached, holding an evidence bag. "Found this behind the shed, sir," he said. "A piece of cloth, smells like chemicals, caught in the bushes near the vent." Poirot examined the cloth, its fibres stained with a faint, acrid residue. "Cyanide, perhaps," he murmured, "or a solvent used to clean it. This is significant, Inspector. The vent, the shed, the cloth. They form a trail." Hastings, rubbing his hands against the chill, frowned. "Crane's hiding something, Poirot. He's too calm, too vague. And that cloth, could he have used it to handle the canister?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. "But Crane is a man of routine, not impulse. If he is our murderer, his motive isn't yet clear. Envy drives Doctor. Lyle, ambition drives young Reed, but Crane, what does he gain from Warrender's death?" Japp snorted. "Money, maybe. Someone could have paid him to look the other way, or to do the deed himself." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A possibility, oui, but we need evidence. The cloth, it must be analysed, and the oil tin, compare its contents to the grease on Reed's sleeve and the telescope. Every detail, it builds the picture." They returned to the observatory's office, where Warrender's notebook lay open on the desk. Poirot flipped to a page he had marked, a note scrawled in haste. "Crane saw L near the vent last week. Must watch closely." "Tiens," Poirot said, pointing to the text. "Doctor." Warrender suspected Doctor. Lyle was near the vent. And Crane, he was his eyes. Yet he says nothing of this to us. Hastings's brow furrowed. So Crane's covering for Lyle, or maybe he's just not telling us everything. Poirot nodded, his expression resolute. The groundskeeper's silence, it speaks volumes. But we must listen carefully. Come, mes amis. The dawn approaches, and with it the truth draws nearer. We must verify alibis, analyze clues, and probe the hearts of those who walk these silent grounds. The observatory loomed behind them, its dome a mute witness to the secrets it held. Poirot's mind, sharp as the stars above, was already piecing together the puzzle, each clue a step closer to the killer's identity. Chapter 7. The Groundskeeper's Silence. The Cresthaven Observatory's grounds were shrouded in the pre-dawn chill, the frost glistening on the manicured hedges like a scattering of diamonds under the faint starlight. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned tightly against the cold, moved with his usual precision across the uneven path leading to the groundskeeper's shed. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his scarf pulled tight, muttering about the unearthly hour, while Inspector Japp, ever pragmatic, strode ahead, his torch cutting through the shadows. The shed, a squat structure of weathered wood and corrugated iron, stood near the observatory's rear, its proximity to the external ventilation vent a detail that had not escaped Poirot's meticulous mind. "The groundskeeper, Amos Crane," Poirot murmured, his breath forming brief clouds in the frigid air. "He is the silent shadow of this place, always present, yet unseen. His hands, they carry the scent of chemicals, and his shed, it may hold the key to our mystery." Hastings shivered, his voice low. "Crane's a tough nut to crack, Poirot. Hardly says a word. But those eyes of his, they see everything." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting. "It is the silent ones who often know the most. We must listen to what Monsieur Crane does not say." Japp reached the shed first, rapping sharply on the door. "Crane! Police! Open up!" The door creaked open, revealing Amos Crane's grizzled figure, his broad shoulders filling the frame. His face, weathered as old leather, betrayed no surprise, only a flicker of wariness in his pale blue eyes. He wore a patched canvas coat, his calloused hands resting calmly at his sides, though Poirot noted the faint chemical odor clinging to them, sharper now in the confined space of the shed's threshold. "What's this about?" Amos asked, his voice a low rumble, like gravel underfoot. Poirot stepped forward, his demeanor courteous but unyielding. "Monsieur Crane, we seek the truth about Dr. Warrender's death. You, as the guardian of these grounds, have seen much, perhaps more than you have shared. May we enter?" Amos hesitated, then stepped aside, allowing them into the shed. The interior was a chaos of tools and gardening supplies, shovels, rakes, bags of fertilizer stacked against the walls, and a workbench cluttered with screws, cans of oil, and a battered lantern. The air was thick with the scent of earth and chemicals, a pungent mix that made Hastings wrinkle his nose. Poirot, however, moved with purpose, his magnifying glass in hand, inspecting the workbench with the precision of a jeweler. "You found Dr. Warrender's body at dawn," Poirot began, his voice soft but probing. "Through the observatory's window, you said, yet you did not enter. Why so cautious, monsieur?" Amos folded his arms, his expression impassive. "Didn't need to. Saw he was dead, slumped, not moving. I know better than to mess with a crime scene. Called the police straight off." Poirot's eyes flicked to a pair of heavy gloves on the workbench, their cuffs stained with a faint, acrid residue. These gloves, they carry a curious smell, not unlike the cyanide we suspect killed Dr. Warrender. You use pesticides, oui? But cyanide, it is not a common choice for gardens. Amos's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Pesticides, aye. For the roses, the hedges, strong stuff, but nothing illegal. You won't find cyanide in my shed. Jap, growing impatient, stepped forward. We'll see about that, Crane. My men are searching this place top to bottom. If there's anything here, we'll find it. Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming but firm. Patience, Inspector. Monsieur Crane, you have access to the observatory's exterior, including the ventilation vent, where we found a fragment of a screw. A canister, perhaps, placed to release a deadly gas. You know the grounds well. Every path, every shadow. Did you see anyone near the vent yesterday? Amos's eyes narrowed, but he shook his head. I was fixing a gate on the far side of the grounds till late. Didn't see nobody near the observatory. Too dark, anyway. Poirot's gaze lingered on Amos, reading the subtle tension in his posture. Dark, oui, but you are a man who notices details. The telescope, it was moved to point at a blank sky. Did you ever assist, Doctor? Warrender with its maintenance, or perhaps observe others doing so? Amos shrugged, his broad shoulders shifting. I don't touch the telescope. That's for the scientists. I clean the grounds, fix the pipes, that's all. Reed was always fiddling with it, though. Oiling gears, adjusting things for Warrender. Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind seizing on the mention of Thomas Reed. Young Reed, oui. And Dr. Lyle. Did she ever speak of Dr. Warrender's work, perhaps with resentment? Amos's lips curled slightly, a rare hint of emotion. She's a sharp one, Dr. Lyle. Heard her arguing with Warrender once about money for the observatory. She wasn't happy he got the lion's share. But that's not my business. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. He moved to the workbench, his magnifying glass hovering over a small tin of machine oil, its lid slightly askew. The oil matched the type found on Reed's sleeve and the telescope's gears. This oil, monsieur, it is used for machinery, non? Perhaps for the telescope. Amos grunted. Could be. I use it for my tools, the gate hinges. Reed might have borrowed some. He's always in here, asking for this or that. Jap's eyes lit up. Borrowed, eh? That puts Reed near your shed, Crane. And if he got oil from here, he could have got something else, like a canister. Poirot's expression remained serene, but his mind was racing. Possible, Inspector. But we must not leap. Monsieur Crane, your shed is close to the external vent. Did you notice anything unusual there yesterday? A sound? A shadow? Amos's gaze flickered, almost imperceptibly. Nothing I recall. I was busy. Grounds don't keep themselves. Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing. Merci, Monsieur Crane. You have been most helpful. We will speak again. As they stepped back into the cold, Jap's constable approached, holding an evidence bag. Found this behind the shed, sir, he said. A piece of cloth, smells like chemicals, caught in the bushes near the vent. Poirot examined the cloth, its fibers stained with a faint, acrid residue. Cyanide, perhaps, he murmured, or a solvent used to clean it. This is significant, Inspector. The vent, the shed, the cloth, they form a trail. Hastings, rubbing his hands against the chill, frowned. Crane's hiding something, Poirot. He's too calm, too vague. And that cloth, could he have used it to handle the canister? Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. But Crane is a man of routine, not impulse. If he is our murderer, his motive is not yet clear. Envy drives Doctor. Lyle, ambition drives young Reed. But Crane, what does he gain from Warrender's death? Japp snorted. Money, maybe. Someone could have paid him to look the other way, or to do the deed himself. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A possibility, but we need evidence. The cloth, it must be analyzed, and the oil tin. Compare its contents to the grease on Reed's sleeve and the telescope. Every detail, it builds the picture. They returned to the observatory's office, where Warrender's notebook lay open on the desk. Poirot flipped to a page he had marked, a note scrawled in haste. Crane saw L near the vent last week. Must watch closely. Tiens, Poirot said, pointing to the text. Doctor. Warrender suspected Doctor. Lyle was near the vent. And Crane, he was his eyes. Yet he says nothing of this to us. Hastings's brow furrowed. So Crane's covering for Lyle? Or maybe he's just not telling us everything. Poirot nodded, his expression resolute. The groundskeeper's silence, it speaks volumes. But we must listen carefully. Come, mes amis. The dawn approaches, and with it, the truth draws nearer. We must verify alibis, analyze clues, and probe the hearts of those who walk these silent grounds. The observatory loomed behind them, its dome a mute witness to the secrets it held. Poirot's mind, sharp as the stars above, was already piecing together the puzzle, each clue a step closer to the killer's identity. Chapter 8. The nebula's secret, the pale light of dawn, crept over the frost-laden grounds of the Cresthaven Observatory, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the manicured lawns. Inside the administrative wing, the small office where Hercule Poirot now sat was a haven of order amidst the chaos of suspicion and death. The desk before him was littered with Dr. Felix Warrender's papers, but it was the leather-bound notebook that held Poirot's attention, its pages a labyrinth of equations and cryptic notes. Captain Hastings stood by the window, his breath fogging the glass as he watched the horizon brighten, while Inspector Japp, his coat slung over a chair, pored over a fresh report from the laboratory. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the lingering tension of an unsolved crime. Poirot's gloved fingers turned the pages of Warrender's notebook with the reverence of a scholar, his sharp green eyes scanning each line. The phrase, "the Veil Nebula Anomaly," appeared repeatedly, underlined with a fervor that spoke of obsession. "This anomaly," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the quiet room. It was Dr. Warrender's passion, his legacy. To understand it is to understand the motive for his death. Hastings turned from the window, his brow furrowed. "But what is it, Poirot? A nebula's just a cloud of gas, isn't it? What's so special about this one?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Not merely a cloud, mon ami, but a window to the universe's secrets. The Veil Nebula. It is a remnant of a supernova, a star that died in a blaze of glory. Dr. Warrender's notes suggest he discovered something extraordinary within it, a spectral shift, an energy signature that defies known physics. If true, it could challenge our understanding of stellar evolution, perhaps even earn him the highest honors." Japp looked up from the laboratory report, his expression grim. "Sounds like a big deal. Big enough to kill for, maybe. The lab confirmed the residue in the ventilation grate. Definitely cyanide. And that cloth from Crane's shed. Traces of a solvent, likely used to clean a canister. We're getting closer, Poirot. Poirot nodded, his eyes still fixed on the notebook. Oui, Inspector. But close is not enough. The nebula's secret. It is the heart of this crime. Someone wished to claim it, or to bury it. He flipped to a page where Warrender had written in bold, L suspects, must secure data. Another note, scrawled in haste, read, T eager, but not ready. C watches too closely. Dr. Lyle, Thomas Reed, Amos Crane, Poirot said softly. Each is named, each a thread in this tapestry of deceit. Hastings rubbed his chin, his face thoughtful. Lyle's got the most to gain, hasn't she? If Warrender's discovery overshadowed her work, she might have wanted him out of the way. But Reed, he's tied to the nebula, too. And Crane, what's his stake in this? Poirot's gaze drifted to the ceiling, as if seeing the stars beyond. That is the question, Hastings. Dr. Lyle, with her envy and her access to cyanide, is a clear suspect. Young Reed, with his ambition and his knowledge of the telescope, could seek to steal the glory. But Crane, the silent watcher, what does he gain? A bribe, perhaps, or a deeper motive we have yet to uncover. Japp slapped the report onto the desk. Speaking of Lyle, we found something in her office, a draft of a letter to the Observatory's board demanding more funding for her galactic cluster research. She accuses Warrender of monopolizing resources. Pretty strong words. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A motive, oui, but not proof. The letter, it shows her frustration, but does it show a killer's intent? He turned back to the notebook, pausing at a diagram of the Veil Nebula, its wispy structure rendered in meticulous detail. Beside it, Warrender had written, Anomaly confirmed at 2300 hours. Spectral shift at 656.3 nanometers. Must publish before L's interference. 656.3 nanometers, Poirot mused. The hydrogen alpha line, a key to nebula spectroscopy. Warrender's anomaly. It is a shift in this line, an indication of something extraordinary, perhaps a new stellar process. To publish this would secure his legacy, but it would also threaten those who stood in his shadow. Hastings frowned. So, Lyle might have wanted to stop him from publishing, or Reed might have wanted to take credit himself. Or Crane, Poirot added, might have been persuaded to act for another's gain. But the telescope's misdirection to a blank sky. It is a scientist's touch. None. Only one who understands astronomy would know to obscure the nebula's coordinates. Japp's constable entered, carrying a small evidence bag. Sir, we checked the storage records from the lab. The cyanide vial was accessed last week, signed out by Dr. Lyle, but Reed was in the lab that day too. Crane's name doesn't appear, but he's got a key to the cleaning cupboard, which is next to the chemical storage. Poirot examined the bag, which contained a tiny metal spring, its coils delicate but tarnished. Another piece of the canister, perhaps, he said. Found where? Near the external vent, the constable replied, caught in the grass like it was dropped in a hurry. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the clues, the cyanide residue, the screw fragment, the solvent-stained cloth, and now this spring. The canister, it was small, precise, designed to fit within the ventilation system. The killer placed it, set its timer, and returned to retrieve it. But in their haste, they left these traces. A scientist, a student, or a groundskeeper, each could have done this, but only one did. He turned to Warrender's notebook, flipping to a final entry. Presentation prepared. T to be credited. L's theories disproved. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. "This is significant. Dr. Warrender intended to credit young Reed in his paper, but to challenge Dr. Lyle's work. A double motive, glory for one, humiliation for another." Japp's eyes widened. So Lyle had reason to stop him, and Reed had reason to push things along. But where does Crane fit? Poirot's smile was faint but resolute. Crane, he watches. His silence, it is his weapon. But the notebook, it suggests he saw something. Perhaps Dr. Lyle near the vent, as Warrender noted. We must press him further. But first, the telescope. Its settings, they were changed to mislead us. But the logbook may yet reveal the truth. They returned to the observatory dome, the morning light filtering through the slit, casting a pale glow on the telescope's brass and steel. Poirot consulted the logbook, its pages a record of celestial observations. The final entry, dated the night of Warrender's death, confirmed the coordinates of the Vale Nebula. But a later hand, fainter, less steady, had overwritten them with the blank sky's settings. "Regarde," Poirot said, pointing to the alteration. This was done after Warrender's death. The ink, it is fresher, the pressure lighter. The killer sought to erase the nebula's trace, but they could not erase the logbook's truth. Hastings gasped. So the telescope was deliberately moved. But who had the chance? Poirot's gaze swept the dome, lingering on the ventilation grate, the scratched gear, the silent chair, where Warrender had died. Dr. Lyle, with her knowledge of the telescope's controls. Young Reed, with his maintenance duties. Or Crane, who moves unseen through these grounds. Each is possible, but the nebula's secret, it points to a mind that understands its value. Japp clenched his fists. "We're closing in, Poirot. I'll have my men double-check the alibis. Lyle's housekeeper, Reed's night porter, Crane's movements. If one of them slips, we've got them." Poirot nodded, his expression serene yet intense. "Oui, Inspector. But the truth, it is not in the slip. It is in the pattern. The nebula, the cyanide, the telescope. They form a constellation of motive and method. We must follow it to its end." As they stepped into the growing light, the observatory stood silent, its dome a guardian of secrets. Poirot's mind, sharp as the dawn, was already tracing the next thread in the intricate web of murder. Chapter 9. The telescope's tail. The Cresthaven Observatory's dome loomed against the pale morning sky, its steel and glass structure catching the first rays of sunlight like a beacon of silent secrets. Inside, the air was cool and heavy, carrying the faint metallic tang of machinery and the lingering echo of Dr. Felix Warrender's untimely death. Hercule Poirot stood beside the great telescope, its towering form a monument to human curiosity, its lens still fixed on a deceptive patch of blank sky. His gloved hands rested lightly on the control panel, his sharp green eyes tracing the intricate gears and levers with the intensity of a master deciphering a cipher. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his face etched with the strain of the unfolding mystery, while Inspector Japp, his notebook in hand, surveyed the room with a mixture of frustration and determination. "The telescope," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the cavernous dome. "It is the silent witness to this crime. It was moved, its coordinates altered, to point at nothingness. But why? To obscure Dr. Warrender's discovery, or to cast suspicion elsewhere?" Hastings rubbed his chin, his brow furrowed. "It's a clever trick, Poirot. Makes it look like Warrender was losing his grip, staring at an empty sky. But who'd know enough to pull it off? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his relish for the challenge. Précisément, mon ami. Only one with knowledge of astronomy could execute such a deception. Dr. Lisle, with her years of expertise. Young Reed, with his studies under Warrender. Or perhaps Monsieur Crane, who, though he claims ignorance, moves through this place like a shadow, seeing all. Japp flipped open his notebook, his voice gruff. We've got the logbook's evidence. The coordinates were changed after Warrender's death. The ink's different, the handwriting shakier. And that scratch on the azimuth gear, it's fresh, like someone forced the mechanism in a hurry. Poirot nodded, his gaze fixed on the telescope's gears, where the faint scratch gleamed under the dome's artificial lights. He produced his magnifying glass, its lens catching the light as he leaned closer. This scratch, he said, it is not the work of routine maintenance. It is deliberate, made with a tool, a screwdriver, perhaps, wielded by a hand that knew the telescope's workings. The grease we found on Monsieur Reed's sleeve, it matches the oil used here. But the groundskeeper's shed, it also holds such oil. Hastings's eyes widened. So, it could be either Reed or Crane, or Lisle. She's got the brains to know how to shift the telescope. Oui, Poirot replied, stepping back to survey the instrument's full majesty. But let us consult the logbook once more. Its pages, they tell a story the killer could not erase. He opened the logbook, its leather cover worn but sturdy, and turned to the final entries. The night of Warrender's death was marked with precise coordinates for the Vale Nebula, followed by the overwritten settings for the blank sky. Poirot's finger traced the altered text, noting the subtle tremor in the handwriting. This was done in haste, he said. The killer. They were nervous, perhaps fearing discovery. But they knew enough to choose a region devoid of stars, a choice that requires understanding. Japp's constable entered, carrying a report from the laboratory. Sir, the grease on Reed's sleeve. It's a match for the telescope's gears and the oil in Crane's shed. Same composition, down to the additives. And the cloth from the shed. Definite traces of a cyanide-based solvent. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind weaving the clues into a pattern. Bon. The grease, it links Reed and Crane, but the cloth, it points to the vent near Crane's shed, and the cyanide, it ties back to Dr. Lisle's laboratory. The telescope's tale, it is one of collaboration. Each suspect contributes a thread, but only one weaves the whole. He moved to the telescope's control panel, examining the settings with care. The coordinates for the Vale Nebula. They were precise, recorded at 2300, as Warrender's notes confirm. The change to a blank sky, it came later, after his death. The killer had access to this panel, and the skill to adjust it. Japp scratched his jaw. Lisle's got access. Her office is full of star charts, and she's worked this telescope for years. Reed's been in here too, helping with maintenance. Crane. Well, he's always around, but he says he doesn't touch the equipment. Poirot's gaze drifted to the ventilation grate, where the cyanide residue had been found. The telescope and the vent, they are linked. The killer used the ventilation system to deliver the poison, then moved the telescope to obscure Warrender's work. This suggests a mind that fears the discovery's exposure, or seeks to claim it. Hastings frowned, his voice thoughtful. But why not just steal the notes? Why kill Warrender and go through all this trouble? Poirot's smile was faint, but knowing. Because, mon ami, a discovery is only as valuable as the man Who claims it? To steal the notes risks scrutiny. To remove Warrender ensures silence. The blank sky, it is a distraction, meant to make us question his sanity. But the logbook, it betrays the truth. He flipped to an earlier page in the logbook, where Warrender had noted L-accessed telescope controls, February 3rd. Suspicious adjustments. Dr. Lyle, Poirot said. She was here 2 nights before the murder, tampering with the settings. Warrender noticed. And here, he pointed to another entry. T assisted with calibration, January 3rd. Eager, but imprecise. Young Reed, he was present too, his hands on the gears. But Crane, he is absent from these records, yet his shed lies close to the vent. Japp's eyes narrowed. So Lyle and Reed both had their hands on the telescope. Crane's got no record, but he's got that cloth and the oil. We're still deduced from the logbook, and the physical evidence, the telescope's misdirection was a calculated act, and the killer's identity was closer to being revealed. Poirot's mind, like the telescope itself, was trained on the truth, ready to adjust its focus to capture the final, elusive star in this constellation of crime. Chapter 10. The Timed Trap. The morning sun cast a cold, clear light through the observatory's dome, its rays glinting off the polished brass of the great telescope, which stood like a mute sentinel over the scene of Dr. Felix Warrender's death. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat immaculate despite the chill, moved with purposeful grace around the instrument, his sharp green eyes tracing the faint scratch on the azimuth gear, a silent accusation etched in metal. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood near the ventilation grate, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease, while Inspector Japp, his notebook clutched tightly, directed a constable to re-examine the external vent. The air within the dome carried a lingering trace of that acrid chemical scent, a ghost of the cyanide that had claimed Warrender's life. Poirot's mind, a finely tuned mechanism, was piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The cyanide residue, the tampered telescope, the solvent-stained cloth, the metal spring, and the damning requisition form signed by Dr. Margaret Lyle. Each clue was a thread, and now, as the morning brightened, Poirot sought to weave them into the tapestry of truth. "The method," he murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the cavernous space. "It is ingenious. A timed trap, delivering death through the very air Dr. Warrender breathed. But how, and by whose hand?" Hastings turned from the grate, his brow furrowed. "You're certain it was gas, Poirot? No needle marks, no poison in his tea, just air?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching with conviction. "The coroner's report confirms cyanide poisoning, with no trace of ingestion. The ventilation system, it was the silent assassin. A canister, small and precise, was placed within the external vent, set to release its deadly cargo at midnight when Warrender worked alone. The killer then returned, removed the evidence, and left the door bolted from within." Japp's eyes narrowed as he joined them, the constable trailing behind with a small evidence bag. "That's a tall order, Poirot. Getting in and out without a key, setting a timer, moving the telescope. All without being seen. Whoever did this was meticulous." Poirot's gaze flicked to the constable's bag, which held a tiny coiled wire, glinting faintly in the light. "And what have we here, Inspector?" The constable stepped forward. "Found it near the external vent, sir. Half buried in the soil. Looks like part of a timing mechanism. Maybe from a clock or a small device. Poirot took the bag, examining the wire through his magnifying glass. "Tiens," he said softly. "This is no ordinary wire. It is fine, designed for precision, as one might find in a laboratory device or a timed canister. It matches the spring and screw fragment we found. The killer. They were not as careful as they believed." He turned to the telescope, its lens still fixed on the blank sky, a deliberate misdirection to obscure Warander's study of the Veil Nebula anomaly. "The telescope's role, it is crucial," Poirot continued. "Its coordinates were changed after Warander's death, as the logbook confirms. The killer wished to make his work appear as madness, to divert suspicion from the nebula's secret. But the scratch on the gear, the grease, the overwritten log, they betray a hand that acted in haste." Japp scratched his jaw, his notebook open to a page of scribbled notes. "We've got Lyle with the cyanide requisition, Reed with the grease on his sleeve, and Crane with that cloth near his shed. But this wire, it's another piece pointing to a lab, not a groundskeeper's tools." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Indeed, Inspector. The laboratory, it is the cradle of this crime. Dr. Lyle, with her access to chemicals and knowledge of the telescope, is a strong candidate. Young Reed, with his ambition and familiarity with the machinery, is another. But Crane, his proximity to the vent and his silence, they cannot be dismissed." Hastings frowned, his voice thoughtful. "But the locked door, Poirot. How did the killer get in to retrieve the canister?" "The bolt was thrown from the inside, and Warrender had the only key." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of revelation in their depths. "The door, mon ami, is a deception. The killer did not need to enter the dome to retrieve the canister. The external vent, it is accessible from the grounds, hidden by bushes near Crane's shed. They placed the canister, set its timer, and returned after the gas had done its work. The door remained locked, untouched, a perfect alibi." Japp's constable returned, breathless. "Sir, we've got something else. A purchase record from a local supplier. Dr. Lyle bought a small gas canister 3 weeks ago, listed for lab experiments. It's the kind that could fit in the vent." Poirot's moustache twitched, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Ah, the canister. It begins to take shape. Madame Lyle, she has much to explain. But we must be cautious. The purchase is evidence, but not proof. Others could have accessed it, in a laboratory shared by many." He moved to Warrender's desk, where the scientist's notebook lay open, its pages a testament to his brilliance and his fears. Poirot flipped to a note scrawled in the margin. L asked about vent maintenance, January 3rd. Suspicious. "Doctor Lyle, she inquired about the ventilation," Poirot said. "Warrender noted it, perhaps sensing danger. And here," he pointed to another entry, "T adjusted gears, January 3rd. Check alignment." Young Reed, too, was close to the telescope's heart. Japp's eyes lit up. "So Lyle knew about the vent, and Reed was messing with the telescope. Crane's still in the picture, though. His shed's too close to that vent for comfort." Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the ventilation grate, where the faint cyanide residue lingered like a whisper of death. The timed trap, it required knowledge and opportunity. The canister, the telescope, the vent. They form a sequence, a plan executed with precision. But the wire, the spring, the screw, they are the killer's mistakes, left behind in their haste to cover their tracks. Hastings shivered, though the dome was warming with the morning sun. It's chilling, Poirot. A trap set to kill at midnight, with Warrender none the wiser. But why move the telescope at all? Why not just leave it? Poirot's smile was faint, but resolute. Because, Hastings, the telescope was Warrender's voice. It pointed to the Vale Nebula anomaly, his great discovery. To leave it unchanged was to risk the world knowing his triumph. The blank sky. It was a lie to obscure the truth. A lie told by one who feared the nebula's secret. He turned to Japp, his voice firm. Inspector, we must verify the alibis once more. Dr. Lyle's housekeeper, Reed's night porter, Crane's movements, each must be scrutinized. And the canister's purchase, trace its delivery, its storage. The laboratory records, they will tell us who touched it last. Japp nodded, scribbling in his notebook. I'll get my men on it. We're closing in, Poirot. That canister's the key. If we find it, we've got our killer. Poirot's eyes returned to the telescope, its silent form a challenge to his intellect. The timed trap, it is a masterpiece of a cunning. But no trap is perfect. The little grey cells, they see through the shadows. Come, mes amis, let us prepare for the final act. The truth, it is near, and the stars, they will guide us. As they stepped into the growing light, the observatory's dome stood resolute, its secrets teetering on the edge of revelation. Poirot's mind, sharp as the morning sun, was already aligning the final pieces of the puzzle, ready to unmask the hand that had set the deadly trap. Chapter 11. The Confrontation. The Cresthaven Observatory's administrative office was bathed in the harsh light of midday, the electric lamp casting stark shadows across the cluttered desk where Hercule Poirot stood, his small, immaculate figure a beacon of calm amidst the storm of suspicion. The room was crowded, the air thick with tension, as Dr. Margaret Lyle, Thomas Reed, and Amos Crane sat in a semicircle of mismatched chairs, their faces a tableau of unease, defiance, and guarded silence. Captain Hastings leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his eyes darting between the suspects, while Inspector Japp stood by the door, his notebook clutched like a shield. The weight of the evidence, the cyanide residue, the tampered telescope, the solvent-stained cloth, the metal spring, and the damning purchase record, hung over the room like a gathering storm. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the trio with a quiet intensity, his moustache perfectly still, betraying none of the fervour burning in his mind. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice soft, but carrying the authority of truth. We stand at the crossroads of a tragedy. Dr. Felix Warrender, a man of brilliance, was struck down in this observatory, his life extinguished by a poison delivered through the air itself. The telescope, his faithful companion, was turned to a blank sky, a lie to obscure his great discovery, the Vale Nebula anomaly. Today, Hercule Poirot will unravel this lie and name the one who set the deadly trap. Dr. Lyle's posture stiffened, her grey eyes narrowing, though her voice remained steady. This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. I've told you everything. I was in my office, working, the night Felix died. I had no reason to harm him. Thomas Reed, his spectacles slipping down his nose, fidgeted in his chair, his ink-stained fingers twisting a handkerchief. I was in the library, like I said. The night porter saw me. I'd never hurt Dr. Warrender. He was my mentor. Amos Crane, his weathered face impassive, folded his arms across his broad chest, his pale blue eyes fixed on a point beyond Poirot. I found him, that's all. Didn't touch nothing. Didn't do nothing. Poirot raised a gloved hand, silencing their protests with a single gesture. Patience, mes amis. The truth, it is not in your words, but in the evidence, the silent witnesses that speak louder than any alibi. Let us reconstruct the crime, step by step, and see where the stars lead us. He moved to the desk where Warender's notebook lay open, its pages a testament to his genius and his fears. Doctor! Warrender was studying the Veil Nebula anomaly, a spectral shift that promised to redefine astronomy. His notes reveal his suspicion of interference. By Doctor? Lyell, whose ambition he feared? By young Reed, whose eagerness? Noted, and by Crane, whose silent watchfulness he observed. But it is the method of his death that points to the killer. Poirot turned to the ventilation grate, its narrow slit a portal to the crime's heart. A canister, small and precise, was placed in the external vent, set to release cyanide gas at midnight when Warrender worked alone. The killer, knowing the observatory's routine, ensured the door was bolted from within, using Warrender's own key. The gas, it was invisible, silent, deadly. But the killer returned, retrieved the canister, and left traces, a screw, a spring, a wire, a cloth stained with solvent. These are the fingerprints of their guilt. Japp stepped forward, holding up the evidence bag with the coiled wire. We've got more, Poirot. The supplier confirmed, Doctor. Lyell's purchase of a gas canister, listed for lab use, and the lab records show she accessed the cyanide vial the day before Warrender's death. Lyell's face flushed, her voice sharp. That canister was for spectrographic calibration. I've explained this. Felix approved it himself. You can't pin this on me because of a purchase. Poirot's gaze locked onto hers, unyielding yet calm. Madame Lyell, your ambition, it is well documented. Warrender's notes speak of your interference, your arguments over funding. His discovery, it threatened your own work on galactic clusters. His paper, found hidden in his desk, credits young Reed, but disputes your theories. A humiliation, non? Lyell's hands clenched, her knuckles whitening. I didn't need to kill him to prove myself. My research stands on its own. Felix was arrogant, yes, but I'm no murderer. Poirot turned to Thomas, whose nervous twitching had intensified. Monsieur Reed, you too had motive. The grease on your sleeve, it matches the telescope's gears, and Warrender's notes confirm your work on the Veil Nebula. His paper would have launched your career, but only if it was published. Did you grow impatient, perhaps, waiting for your mentor's approval? Thomas's voice cracked, his eyes wide. No, I respect it, Doctor. Warrender. I was in the library, I swear. I didn't touch the telescope that night. Poirot's gaze shifted to Amos Crane, whose silence was a wall of stone. And you, Monsieur Crane, the silent watcher. Your shed. It is steps from the vent where the canister was placed. The cloth, stained with solvent, was found in your bushes. Your gloves, they carry the scent of chemicals. Warrender noted your presence near the vent. Did you see something? Or do something? Crane's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. I told you I was fixing a gate till late. Didn't see nothing, didn't do nothing. That cloth ain't mine. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor with deliberate rhythm. The telescope, it tells the final tale. Its coordinates were changed after Warrender's death, pointing to a blank sky. A lie to make him. Seem mad. Only one with knowledge of astronomy could choose such a deception. Dr. Lyell, you have the expertise. Monsieur Reed, you have the training. Monsieur Crane, you claim ignorance, but your proximity to the vent speaks otherwise. He stopped, before Doctor. Lyle, his eyes piercing. "Madame, the evidence, it circles you like planets around a star. The canister purchase, the cyanide vial, your access to the telescope controls, your motive to silence Warrender's challenge to your work, the scratch on the gear, it matches a screwdriver found in your office, the solvent on the cloth, it traces to your laboratory, and Warrender's note, L near vent, it is your shadow." Lyle rose, her face pale but defiant. "This is circumstantial. You have no proof I placed that canister or moved the telescope." Poirot's voice softened, but its edge was sharp. "Proof, madame, is in the pattern. You argued with Warrender over funding, knowing his discovery would eclipse yours. You accessed the cyanide, purchased the canister, and knew the vent's layout from your years here. You set the timer, returned to retrieve the canister, and adjusted the telescope to cast doubt on his sanity. But the scratch, the wire, the spring, they betray you. And your lab coat, it carries a faint trace of the same solvent found near the vent." Lyle's composure cracked, her voice trembling. He was going to take everything, my funding, my reputation. His anomaly. It disproved my theories, mocked my work. I couldn't let him ruin me. Thomas gasped, his handkerchief falling to the floor. Crane's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent. Japp stepped forward, his voice firm. "Margaret Lyle, you're under arrest for the murder of Felix Warrender." As the constable led her away, her head bowed, Poirot's expression was one of quiet sorrow. "Ambition, it is a fire that warms or consumes. For Madame Lyle, it consumed all." Hastings shook his head, stunned. "She planned it so carefully, Poirot. The locked room, the gas, the telescope. It's diabolical." Poirot nodded, his gaze distant. "Diabolical, oui, but human. The stars, they shine without envy. But men and women, they burn with it. Come, mes amis, the truth is revealed. But the work of justice, it begins now." The observatory, silent once more, stood as a testament to the brilliance and the tragedy it had witnessed, its dome a silent guardian of the stars above. Chapter 12. The stars align. The Cresthaven Observatory stood bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon, its dome a gleaming sentinel against the clear winter sky. The frost that had clung to the grounds was melting under the sun's tentative warmth, leaving the earth damp and glistening. Inside the administrative office, Hercule Poirot sat at the cluttered desk, his gloved hands folded neatly before him, his sharp green eyes reflecting a quiet triumph. The weight of Dr. Margaret Lyle's confession hung in the air. A heavy curtain lifted to reveal the truth of Dr. Felix Warrender's murder. Captain Hastings stood by the window, gazing out at the observatory's silhouette, his face a mixture of awe and melancholy, while Inspector Japp, his notebook finally closed, leaned against the wall, exhaustion etched into his features. Poirot's voice, soft but resonant, broke the silence. "Mes amis, the puzzle is complete. The little grey cells, they have aligned the stars of this mystery, and the truth, it shines as brightly as the Veil Nebula itself." Hastings turned, his brow furrowed. "It's still hard to believe, Poirot. Dr. Lyle, so brilliant, so composed, planning something so cold. That timed gas trap, the telescope's misdirection. It's like a plot from a novel." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "A novel, oui, but written in the ink of human ambition. Dr. Lyle, she saw in Dr. Warrender's discovery a threat to her own legacy. The Veil Nebula anomaly, it was his triumph, but also her defeat. She could not bear to be eclipsed. Japp nodded, his voice gruff but thoughtful. "We've got her confession, and the evidence backs it up. The cyanide vial, the canister purchase, the solvent on her lab coat, the screwdriver that matched the telescope's scratch. It's airtight, Poirot. She'll face the courts now." Poirot's gaze drifted to Warrender's notebook, still open on the desk, its pages a testament to a mind cut short. "The courts, oui, but justice, it is not only punishment, it is also restoration. Dr. Warrender's work, it must not be lost." He lifted the notebook, flipping to the draft of Warrender's paper, its margins filled with notes crediting Thomas Reed and challenging Lyell's theories. "This paper, it will be published. The Veil Nebula Anomaly, it will bear Warrender's name, and young Reed, he will have his share of the light." Hastings's eyes widened. "You mean Reed gets his chance after all, even after being a suspect?" "Oui," Poirot replied, his tone gentle but firm. "Monsieur Reed, he is ambitious, but not guilty. His grease-stained sleeve, it was from honest work on the telescope, not murder. His alibi, it holds. The night porter confirmed his presence in the library until past midnight. He is innocent, and his contribution to Warrender's research, it deserves recognition." Japp scratched his jaw, a rare smile breaking through. "That's decent of you, Poirot. And Crane? He's in the clear, too." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Monsieur Crane, the silent watcher, he saw more than he spoke. Warrender's note about Lyell near the vent, it was Crane who observed her, though he did not tell us. His silence, it was not complicity, but caution. The cloth in his shed, the chemical scent on his gloves, they were red herrings, traces of his routine work with pesticides. He is not our killer." Hastings sighed, his shoulders relaxing. Poor Warrender. All he wanted was to share his discovery with the world. And now, thanks to Lyell's envy, he's gone. Poirot rose, adjusting his hat with meticulous care. "No, Hastings, not gone. His discovery? It lives in these pages, in the stars he studied. The Veil Nebula Anomaly. It will be his legacy. A beacon for those who seek truth in the heavens." He moved to the window, gazing out at the observatory's dome, its steel curves catching the fading light. "The stars, they do not judge, but they bear witness. Dr. Lyell, she sought to dim their light, to steal their glory. But the truth, it cannot be hidden. The telescope, the canister, the notebook. They spoke, and Hercule Poirot listened." Japp clapped his hands together, breaking the moment's solemnity. "Well, Poirot, you've done it again, wrapped up neat as a parcel. I'll have the paperwork sorted, and we'll get that paper to the right people. Reed'll be over the moon, if you'll pardon the pun." Poirot's smile was faint, but genuine. "A pun, Inspector. Très amusant. But yes, let the paper be published, and let the world know of Warrender's brilliance. The stars, they align at last." As they stepped out into the crisp air, the observatory stood silent, its dome a quiet guardian of the secrets it had yielded. Poirot paused, his cane tapping lightly against the ground, his eyes lifted to the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "The universe, it is vast, Hastings, but the heart of man, it is vaster still. Ambition, envy, truth, they are the constellations that guide us." Hastings nodded, his voice soft. "And you, Poirot, you're the one who reads them." Poirot's moustache twitched, a final glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. "Come, mon ami. The case is closed, but the stars, they call us to new adventures." With that, they walked into the twilight, the observatory behind them a monument to a mystery solved, its silent dome bearing witness to the triumph of Hercule Poirot's little grey cells.